SBGA413. That's the subject of today's video. And I filmed a review of this a few days ago, and I felt really good about it at the time. And then I went in and I started editing, and I just started cringing as I heard my own voice because I was fawning all over this watch. I sounded like a giddy schoolboy talking about the Seiratsu polishing. And you know what? I kind of got a little bit disgusted with myself because it sounded like an advertisement. And I know you guys tune into my reviews because you want to look at the details. You want to see the macro shots. You want to hear my opinion, but you want to hear something balanced. And that video, as I was editing, it definitely wasn't balanced. And I think I was just overly positive. And I think that's easy to do with the Grand Seiko. With every Grand Seiko that I've reviewed, outside of the Spring Drive Diver, that one, I thought the macro looked kind of disappointing on that watch. But with every Grand Seiko, outside of one that I've filmed, that I've looked at, that I've had experience with, I've always been very impressed with the level of luxury, the level of finish, hand-finished cases and hand-assembled movements, whether it's high-accuracy quartz, traditional mechanical, or the patented spring drive movements that they're so well known for. It's easy to see why Grand Seiko is impressive and how it packs a pretty powerful punch even at the higher prices that they charge compared to, entry-level Seiko watches. So we're going to talk about this watch, and I'm going to commit myself to be more balanced and not just fawn over the beautiful finishing and the very sharp dial details that you guys will see in the macro video, but also talk about the warts because, with every Grand Seiko that I've tried, there's been one glaring thing that I think just holds the model back, or at least maybe not holds it back, but holds myself back from wanting to put my own money down and purchase a Grand Seiko. I want to own Grand Seiko, and I've owned Grand Seiko in the past. In fact, my most popular video on my channel is just a silly one of me unboxing my first Grand Seiko and dancing around like a fool, to some music. Got over 1 million views. That really kind of surprised me. But anyways, I want to love Grand Seiko, but they do have their own warts that keeps myself from putting down the thousands that are required to buy into this brand in most instances. So guys, today we're talking about the Grand Seiko SBGA413. This is from the Four Seasons collection. In the Four Seasons collection, there are 4 different watches, and each of the watches are meant to invoke the feelings of a certain season, summer, spring, fall, and winter. And this one is the spring, the Shunbun. And the case is inspired from an historical Grand Seiko reference called the 62 GS case that debuted in 1967. It's not exact, but you guys can see, the correlations here with the bezel-less design and the very sharp, angular, linear lugs that I think they look a little odd. There's something disproportionate about this design from the top-down look that I don't think other Grand Seikos have, but I think that is more of a personal preference thing. I think it's certainly beautiful. The finishing is sharp. You guys can see clean lines of delineation. It's all hand finished too. The Seiratsu polishing, the hand brushing, it's all done in the Shinsu Watch Studio in Japan. And that's one of the reasons why I really think Grand Seiko's done a good job here, because for roughly $6,000, you get a hand-finished case, you get a hand-assembled 9R65 spring drive movement, excellent dial details, and that's just pretty uncommon at the price. You spend $6,000 on a Rolex and you get a 34mm Oyster Perpetual, which is still a heck of a watch, but it's mass-produced, it's machine-produced, and it just doesn't have that magic that a lot of the Grand Seikos do. Now, this isn't a Grand Seiko Rolex comparison. I'm just trying to highlight the fact that you get quite a lot from this brand at the price that you really don't get from other brands, other Swiss brands specifically. So let's take a look at the dial work here. We have a texturized dial, and it's similar to the Snowflake. It's not exactly the same as the Snowflake. The pattern, to my eye, is enlarged and a little bit more dominant, and the color is really subtle. It kind of looks like a silver color or perhaps a white, but the inspiration here, the spring version from the Four Seasons collection, is mimicking the cherry blossom as it first blooms in spring. So when it first blooms, it's white with just a hint of rose or pink. And so you can kind of pick that up here in the macro video. It's very subtle, but it is noticeable, and more noticeable depending on the light situation that you're in. And I showed this to my wife and I said, "What do you think of this?" And she says, "You know what? It looks a little bit feminine." And I think she was picking up on that pink or that rose, very subtle hue that you see in the dial depending on the light situation that you're in. But it's gorgeous. You guys can see just such a sharpness and a clarity to the faceted, polished, applied markers. And then if you look at the Dauphine style hands, wow, this is one of the reasons why I was so giddy in my first take. You look at this and I swear you could reach in and it feels like you could cut yourself with how sharp the finish work is, that high polished beveled edge, the fine satin brushing. It is very impressive. Now let's talk about some negative elements because, again, maybe I'm overly conscious, but I don't want to sound too positive. I don't want this to come across as an advertisement. There are a couple things about this model that bug me personally. One is the case back. We have a beautiful exhibition case back, sapphire, where you guys can see the 9R65 spring drive movement. Very well finished, very impressive movement too. It's kind of a hybrid. It's not technically a quartz movement, but I couldn't classify it as a mechanical movement as well. It's kind of a hybrid between the two, but very accurate to plus or minus 15 seconds per month, 72 hours of power reserve. But the thing that bugs me, and I know some of you guys are picking up on this already, is this ugly screening on the underside of the crystal. It obscures part of the movement. And I don't understand this. It just makes no sense to partially obscure something beautiful with something reflective that's kind of hard to make out and read. So I think this is just a boneheaded decision on Grand Seiko's part, and I hope they never do it again. I don't know. I hope they never do it again. I think it's counterintuitive here. The other thing that bothers me, and this will come down to personal preference, and I'm going to have to explain this, but Grand Seiko bracelets, like Seiko bracelets, they leave a little something to be desired. Now, if we look at this, there is nothing wrong with the finish, the level of detail. It's on par with the case. I like the slight beveled edge to the shoulders of each one of these links. It's a perfectly comfortable, functional bracelet, but it has some flex and give to it. It's very different from the Swiss competitors at a similar price point. You know, you look at a Rolex, which is completely rigid for the most part with screw links. You look at this titanium bracelet, and I will say on the stainless steel versions, you do get screw links, but the titanium, because of the nature of the metal, it needs a pin and tube system. So if you're spending $6,000 for the first time and you're buying this beautiful Grand Seiko and you're thinking you're getting the top level in all aspects, you certainly are when it comes to the finishing of the case, the accuracy, the dial details. But when it comes to the bracelet, that's a little bit of a letdown. And please chime in and tell me if you agree with me, if you've experienced a Grand Seiko bracelet. I know they're perfectly functional, perfectly comfortable. I get good adjustment. You do get half links here, but it just seems to be just a bit of a letdown. And maybe that's because I'm used to Swiss bracelets, but tell me what you guys think there in regards to what I've just said. But other than that, we have 100 meters of water resistance. We have a screw down crown. We have drilled lugs. So this watch will be very nice to take it off the bracelet, play with leather strap options and change the feel of this, and maybe play with that subtle color play that you get with the dial, that hint of rose in the silver texturized dial. I think this would be really fun to play with. And that's one of the reasons why some of us are in this hobby, is we like playing with bracelets and straps with the various watches that we collect. And I think this one has a good canvas to play with if you're into that. If you're not into that, obviously it's a moot point. But guys, tell me what you think of this Grand Seiko SBGA413 from the Four Seasons collection. I hope I've been more measured here in my presentation of this watch the second time around. But I think it's beautiful. The detail work is here. Grand Seiko is very exciting, but there is usually something that keeps me back from spending my own money. And I wonder if I'm alone in that. So please chime in the comments section and let me know if you can get where I'm coming from, or if I'm just becoming a Swiss snob and unreasonable and you know what, I'm disappointing you. It's all good. You can let me know in the comment section. You can let it fly. But if you're shopping for this watch, I definitely want to recommend Exquisite Timepieces, specifically Nick. He's the young watch enthusiast that I work with. I bought my Speedmaster from him, my Seamaster from him. He'll definitely help you out where he can when it comes to pricing. So if you're interested in Grand Seiko, in Omega, and any of the other brands that Exquisite carries, I'll put the link in the description to Nick's contact information. So guys, thanks for watching today. Hopefully you enjoyed the review, and I look forward to talking with you in the comments section. Hope you have a great day, and see you in the next one.
Evie, do you have a dolphin?
Yes. I had to put my
Here, Evie, here's your card. Evie, do you have a...
Put your head on.